Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. This is the Good Game Podcast, episode 22, hosted by yours truly. My name is KJ Alexander, aka A1K, and we have a lot to get into on today's episode. But before we get into it, I want to ask a quick favor. If you could please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We have a lot more videos dropping on the channel coming up in the near future, and I don't want you to miss it. So with that being said, today's episode we will be talking about the NBA All-Star Weekend, what has transpired so far, and my opinions on the festivities up to this point. Also, we will wrap up our discussion of the Super Bowl and the halftime performance. A lot of people had a lot to say about the halftime performance at the Super Bowl just last week. So with that being said, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. All right, so we're going to kick off episode 22 of the Good Game Podcast just like this. I want to talk about the NBA All-Star Weekend and give my opinions and my thoughts on what has transpired so far. Just based on what I've seen on the internet and social media, there have been a lot of mixed reviews about NBA All-Star Weekend so far, and I could definitely see why. So as far as the NBA All-Star Weekend goes, the festivities started off on Friday, this past Friday, with the Rising Stars competition. Now, I'll be completely transparent with you guys. I did not get a chance to watch the full Rising Stars competition. I was able to catch bits and pieces of it here and there, but genuinely just something I didn't feel the need to really watch. It was something that was good for the players involved, a lot of the younger players who a lot of NBA fans may not necessarily know on a first name basis. They get to expose themselves to a wider range of audiences and, get to hopefully build some celebrity within the organization. But outside of that, it was pretty bad. Like, I couldn't really watch most of the Rising Star competition, but I'm gonna move on from that for now. Not really much to speak on as far as that. So then Saturday night, got a chance to watch the continued coverage of the NBA All-Star Weekend, and the first item on the slate for the night was the skills competition, and I felt like this was a very bad way to kind of set the tone for the evening. So they had slated the skills competition to come first, and then after the skills competition was the 3-point shootout challenge. And I actually liked the 3-point shootout competition. I feel like it wasn't the best of all time as far as the scores go, but there definitely was a lot of effort there, and you can definitely tell that players were putting their best foot forward. And sometimes shots just don't go in. It happens. It's a part of basketball and shooting, but there definitely was a lot of effort. I believe Buddy Hield was somebody who was able to tie Steph Curry's record for the most 3-point shots made during the competition. I believe he had a total score of 31. So that was cool to see, but ultimately Tyler Hero was able to win that competition pretty easily. I believe he did sneak in as the lowest score of the second round, but was ultimately able to win with the highest score in the last round. Then the dunk competition, which, if you guys are not aware, Mac McClung was able to win the dunk competition for his third consecutive time. And to be quite honest with you, outside of the dunks that Mac was doing, it was a pretty uneventful dunk contest. I mean, there's a couple guys in there who did some pretty impressive dunks, which, in the moment and once you watch it back in slow motion, it definitely appeared to be, pretty spectacular. But I mean, Mac McClung literally came out with the car on the first dunk. This man jumped over a Kia and had somebody holding the basketball through the sunroof and dunked it over both the person and the car, and just blew the lights out the building in the first round. And his next two dunks were all 50s out of that, perfect scores, and nobody was really going to threaten him for that. So according to Mac McClung himself, he said that he would be able to come back to repeat for a fourth time if the NBA wanted him that badly, but he very may well just be done with his three-peat of dunk competition champion. And I wouldn't really blame him. I think in order for these competitions to go on and continue, the NBA definitely has to try harder to push more well-known players and up-and-coming stars in the league to compete in these competitions, because it makes it more watchable for everybody. And yeah, that's just something that's not really happening right now. So because of that, we have somebody, and a phenomenal dunker in Mac McClung, is able to win the dunk competition 3 times in a row and become the only person to ever do such a thing in the NBA All-Star Weekend dunk competition. So I want to go back to the skills event for a second, because I feel like I said before, this was a very bad way to start off All-Star Weekend Saturday night. So Team Cavs, Donovan Mitchell and Evan Mobley bested Team Warriors, Draymond Green and Moses Moody, in the final of the Kia Skills Challenge on Saturday night with a time of 1 minute and 0.03 seconds. But the event didn't end without mild controversy. Team Spurs, Chris Paul and Victor Wembanyama thought it found a loophole in the rules in the obstacle course that features players speeding through stations with various passing and shooting drills. Instead, the duo found itself disqualified from the competition after the first round for failing to complete their sequence with 3 valid shot attempts, eschewing all shots but one, a Wembanyama dunk, in favor for concentrating on executing the passes. Paul and Wembanyama finished the opening round with a time of 47.9 seconds before officials disqualified the Spurs duo. And here is a direct quote from Wembanyama. "I mean, if the challenge lets us do that, there's a loophole," said Wembanyama, who said Team Spurs' non-shooting tactic was his idea. "It means we're not a problem." End quote. That is a problem, however, because that was against the rules, and I'm not sure who Wembanyama was talking to ahead of this, but they definitely gave him some bad information. And because of that, he got the green light to do this tactic, which, although made the time of completion a lot shorter, was against the rules of the competition, henceforth disqualifying himself as well as his teammate Chris Paul. The opening round drill consisted of a variety of passes before the players reached a rack of balls to shoot. Instead of attempting to sink those balls, Team Spurs tossed them in the general direction of the basket without trying to connect. Their effort to speed up the finish to their opening round went for naught. With the disqualification, Paul now has gone 6 times in the skills challenge without a win. His 6 appearances are 2 more than any other player and twice as many as any player besides retired Spurs legend Tony Parker, according to ESPN research. And that is something that is the most disappointing aspect of this competition. Here we have Chris Paul, who is a seasoned NBA veteran, been in the league for multiple decades at this point. And he should know better than to try to mend the rules or go around the rules to try to have a better time in this competition, one in which he has never won. And Chris Paul is a player who many do consider to be one of the greatest point guards of all time to play in the National Basketball Association. But when you're taking the backseat to somebody like Victor Wembanyama, who is on his 2nd year of playing in the NBA, hasn't even completed a full 5 years in the NBA yet, and yet he's the person coming around telling you what you're going to do in the NBA skills competition. In my opinion, at this point, Chris Paul should have been the one to step up and be like, you know what, Victor, if you can't make the shot, then just miss the shot. But we're not about to go and put up some fake just to hurry up and get to the next rack shot attempt. No, we're actually going to at least try to shoot, because that's what we do. We're basketball players. Basketball players at some point are going to have to take a shot. Now, whether you make it or not, hey, that's just on you. But I think it's just a bad look. They could have at least attempted to shoot those basketballs at that time during the competition. Hey, and if they miss, they miss. But trying to circumnavigate the rules in order to get a better time, it's not that deep, fam. Like, this is like something you do at it's just not a good look. You're supposed to be more professional than that. All these people paid all this good money to come see these activities and festivities, and this is the behavior y'all give them is crazy. And I feel like Chris Paul, of all people, should know better. We tried something that we thought could win to see if we had the best time, said Chris Paul, who pleaded Team Spurs' case to officials in the aftermath of the disqualification. Draymond Green mentioned that Wembanyama had asked multiple league officials before the competition about the legality of Team Spurs' strategy of not taking shots. It definitely sucked to see them throwing the ball like that, Green said. What I will say is Wemby walked around the court asking everybody because they say make 1 or 3 attempts. So Wemby said, oh, I can just get all 3 of them up there. So he may not have asked the right people, but I will say in Wemby's defense, he asked a lot of people. I heard him ask 5 or 6 people. According to Skills Challenge rules, players need to take a maximum 3 valid attempts or make a shot before moving on. So not sure who Victor Wembanyama was talking to before he decided to make this little change to the program, but definitely got some bad advice. And you're on camera, my guy. It's not a good look. I feel like you would have been better off had you just attempted the shots. Whether you make them or not, it's not that important. But now we see you trying to go around and mend the rules. And if you really want to go about it like that, you have to make sure you talk to the right people who actually know what they're talking about, not just some random people in the crowd or on the sidelines. Just come on now. Let's do better than that. I feel like the NBA fans, the fan base deserves a little bit better than that. Not totally a huge deal, but because of that, a lot of people are going to give even more criticism to the NBA and All-Star Weekend, which has already received so much criticism as it is. So this is something that definitely was not needed, but it's something that the NBA is going to have to deal with anyways. And it just is what it is. But hopefully, let me know in the comment section whether you guys liked this portion of NBA All-Star Weekend, whether you didn't like it. And yeah, we'll cover this a little bit more as the story progresses. See if we get any more information on how the NBA fans feel about All-Star Weekend. But moving on a little bit, still sticking with the NBA for a second, but shifting gears more towards the NBA as a whole and not just All-Star Weekend. So, Draymond Green of the Golden State Warriors calls NBA games boring, say they have no substance. Draymond Green had just spoken for a few minutes Saturday morning about the state of the game, about how he believes it's officiated differently than it once was, and how stars don't get the benefit of being stars like they did in the past. Then the 4-time champion with the Golden State Warriors was asked a simple question. Does he think the NBA game is boring? Absolutely, he said. Such is the challenge that the NBA is trying to fend off. The notion that this era of higher scoring games, more three-pointers than ever, and a lack of rock'em sock'em physicality like there was a couple of generations ago is hurting the product. I think as a league now, we look so deep into analytics and you hear people saying out loud, we want a 3 or a layup. Don't be shooting too many mid-range jumpers. Milwaukee Bucks guard Damian Lillard said this Saturday. You hear that, and I think it just kind of takes away the originality of the game. I would say it's meant to be played at 3 levels. It's meant to be played a certain way. But it's a copycat league that we play in, and you can't have everybody playing one way. A successful way, and you play a different way. You've got to get in line with what's working to win, and right now, that's what it is. The NBA is about to enter a new series of broadcast and streaming deals that will generate at least $76 billion, about 3 times more than the last deal. So interest still obviously exists, even though ratings are down from a few years ago. In a stat that the league freely acknowledges, player salaries are bigger than ever. The league keeps setting attendance record, and merchandise keeps flying off the shelves. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver points to all of that and more as proof that the state of the game is, he believes, excellent, quote unquote. We are paying a lot of attention to it, Silver said. I'm never going to say there isn't room for improvement. We'll continue to look at it and study it, but I am happy with the state of the game right now, end quote. But the NBA keeps hearing the question about the on-court product, and Green is among those that think issues exist. He cited an interview he recently saw where the late Kobe Bryant, who died in 2020, called the game accidental basketball. It's all penetrate and pitch, Bryant said in that interview. You may make the shot, you may not, end quote. Green said he couldn't have been more right. Green also talked about a recent Warriors game against the Los Angeles Lakers and how it was refreshing to go against a thinker like LeBron James, who is notorious for finding weaknesses and exploiting them. Every possession is some type of chess move, Green said. You don't get that today in the NBA. Often you don't just get that on a regular basis. It's just who can run faster, who can hit more threes. It's no substance. I think it's very boring, end quote. For a team like the Warriors with proven champions like Draymond Green and Stephen Curry, along with a championship coach like Steve Kerr, the run and shoot all the time game isn't exactly the preferred game plan. You want to be one of the teams that aren't playing an accidental game, Green said. That's the challenge, end quote. And I definitely see where Green is coming from. If you are a person who's been watching the NBA through the different eras, you definitely notice the change in the style of play. Players today are more focused on shooting threes and driving to the hoop just to be able to kick it out to a perimeter shooter, as opposed to the days of early 2000s and the 90s where guys were more playing with their back to the basket, more post-centric offenses, more feeding of the big players. And guys were just using their physicality and their strength to get as close to the basket as they can, because the idea was the closer you get to the basket, the better shot you would be able to take. And now the mentality has shifted more towards how far can you shoot? And because of that, shooting percentages have dropped down a little bit, and if you watch the game, there's more time during the game where there's not a lot going on. There's a lot more rebounding, a lot more missed shots, and it really just depends on what you're used to watching as far as the style of play. Because I'm sure there's people who are newer to the sport of basketball who probably watch this new modern style of basketball and they probably enjoy it, because they may not know any difference. But on the other hand, you have people who are used to that 90s style of basketball, that more post-centric style opposed to the perimeter-centric. And they're not as entertained watching this new era of basketball because they have grown accustomed to the older style and the way basketball was originally played back in those days. So I think it really just depends on the person, but I mean, there's not much the NBA can do as far as rule changes, because if you start changing the rules too much, then you kind of create the environment for basketball to look totally different than what it used to look like But it's just a result of the way players play the game. A lot of people have started, being more perimeter centric. That's just the style of play that's been popularized by players like Stephen Curry. And that's just the way people are training now. People are training to shoot more threes as opposed to playing more mid-range games and more post work and footwork oriented. So there's just not that many players in the modern NBA who are skilled in the post as you would see in a player like a Tim Duncan or even a Shaquille O'Neal. There's no more emphasis on the physicality of the game. More now is just about being fast and being able to shoot. So when you see players like the new up and coming players like Ja Morant and Anthony Edwards, these guys have all the talent in the world, but they're not necessarily considered cerebral assassins as far as the game of basketball, where they're looking for opponents' weaknesses and trying to dissect and are able to make their teammates better by exploiting weaknesses in the opposition. Their game more is predicated on their physicality, their athleticism, and them just being better than whoever is in front of them. So when you look at it with that perspective, the game has definitely changed, and I don't think we're going to have any players like Draymond Green and LeBron James in the NBA for a long time, and that just goes to show how great they are. But players these days in the modern age of the league, they're not concerned with being IQ genius basketball players. They just want to be out physical and out fast and be able to shoot more than the other team. So, and that's just where we are with the game right now. Do I personally like it? I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it is good that the game is evolving, because you see the same thing in other sports too. You see the same thing in the NFL with, more teams looking for that dual threat quarterback as opposed to that stand in the pocket, strong arm quarterback. You want to be able to have a quarterback who could throw and run, and that's becoming more of a necessity in modern NFL offenses. And, I just think it's the natural evolution of sports that we're going to see more athleticism and more physicality as far as speed, not necessarily as far as strength. Because, honestly, if a person is having some success offensively in the low post in this modern NBA game, usually it's not too much of a problem. I mean, you have players like Jokic and Sabonis who are effective in the post, but their primary objective is to really be successful in the post in order to draw a double team. That way they can pass the ball out to their teammate who's open for a three or open for a mid-range. So it's not necessarily like they're looking to score every time from the post. A lot of time they're just looking to use the post as a way to kind of draw a double or a triple team and create an open shot for their teammates. So those are some of the things that doesn't really show up on the stat sheet, but that's just kind of how the game is being played these days. Because when you look at some of these all-star, all-level world players, they require so much attention defensively. It's going to come a point in time where you may be forced to double or triple team. And these players know that. So they're going to use that to their advantage more times than not. And whereas back in the day, I mean, there was really not a lot of double and triple teaming going on unless you were really just, a super problem offensively. But for the most part, people played one-on-one, and there's a lot of man. And there wasn't really too many double teaming for the most part until, players like Shaquille O'Neal started to be dominant and force teams to double. But up until that point, it wasn't really a staple of the NBA to see a tremendous amount of double and triple teams on one single player. But yeah, man, let me know in the comments what you guys think about the NBA recently. Do you think it's been getting a lot more boring, or have you enjoyed the spectacle and the sport of basketball product that the NBA has been putting out so far? Let me know in the comment section. And moving on to our final topic of the day. But before we get into it, I want you to do me a favor. If you haven't already, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit that bell notification so you don't miss any videos of the Good Game podcast coming up in the future. Also, I will have the Cash App in the description of this video if you would like to leave a donation. Remember that a whole bunch of ones beat a whole bunch of nones any day. There's no such thing as a small donation. I appreciate all gifts and donations to the Cash App in the description of this video. All right, with that being said, let's go ahead and break down the Super Bowl that just transpired last week. It's been about a week from the time of recording this video since the Super Bowl has transpired in New Orleans. And interestingly enough, people haven't had too much to say about the game itself, but more so about the halftime performance. And of course, like a lot of people, I watched the game and I watched the halftime performance. I thought that as far as the game goes, Kansas City Chiefs versus the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Chiefs just got exposed because I think that people who watched the Chiefs all year were privy to the knowledge that this was a roster that was in need of a lot of help, that it just wasn't able to get in time for the big game. Now, the Chiefs have a very talented roster, and everybody on that team deserved to play in the big game. But when you look at the competition as far as the Philadelphia Eagles go, they were just a team who had more talent, just a bit more poise, maybe wanted it a bit more. And at the end of the day, Kansas City wasn't able to protect their quarterback enough, and Patrick Mahomes was unfortunately forced to throw a lot of bad passes and ended up throwing, I believe, 2 interceptions in the big game. So not Patrick Mahomes' best game as quarterback, especially being it a Super Bowl loss, but I still think he can maintain his status as one of the best quarterbacks of all time. This is not a career-ending loss for him, but definitely something that people will talk about as far as his career goes. But this was something that the Philadelphia Eagles earned and deserved. They had the better quarterback and coach combination, in my opinion. And as far as the better running back as well, with Saquon Barkley, Jalen Hurts. And now we're looking at the next year of the NFL and moving forward with the moves teams will make during the offseason. But I thought the game was pretty uneventful for the most part. It was over at halftime, and the Philadelphia Eagles did what they had to do to secure the Super Bowl victory. Now, as far as the halftime performance, I enjoyed it. I think that a lot of people who didn't enjoy it probably didn't enjoy it for obvious reasons. And that is because the halftime show performed by Kendrick Lamar featured people such as Samuel L. Jackson, who depicted a version of Uncle Sam, aka Sam Jackson. Also featured artists such as SZA and producer DJ Mustard as well. And if you guys were able to check out the performance, it was a dope performance. People would say there's a lot of subliminals and hidden messages within the performance, but I'll just say this: if you watch the performance, I think if you watch the performance and you're knowledgeable and privy to what's going on in America today, then the message was self-evident and it's kind of self-explanatory. I really don't want to have to get into it too much, but I think those who get it, and those who don't. But it was a performance that we definitely can appreciate, just for the simple fact that there was a message being portrayed, and the message spoke directly to a lot of people who feel like this was something that they were happy to see. And it wasn't something that was super commercialized or super watered down. And it was just a very, very fun experience just watching that. And being that the Super Bowl was in New Orleans, I mean, it was just such a dope experience watching all of these acts together at one time. And it was something that I think that people will remember for a long time. Whether they want to admit it or not, it was just the moment was so memorable and it was such a spectacular event. And I think it was very, very well put together. And it's got to be up there with one of the greatest all around Super Bowls of all time, in my opinion, at least just from what I've seen. And now we're moving on to next season of the NFL and what we have in store. What we do know is that the New Orleans Saints have recently hired Kellen Moore of the Philadelphia Eagles to be their new head coach. Former offensive coordinator of the Philadelphia Eagles, Kellen Moore, has agreed to be the new head coach for the New Orleans Saints, who was officially introduced by the team on Thursday. Eagles offensive tackle Jordan Mailata said, "Kellen's a little wizard." He joked on the Monday before the Super Bowl. "He's a little wizard, Harry, and I think his style of play and the way he calls plays, setting up other plays, has been crucial to this year." Can Moore's success as a play caller translate into leading a team? New Orleans believes so. Saints owner Gayle Benson said they wanted a candidate who was exceptionally bright, creative, and more importantly, a tremendous leader. "I believe that is exactly what we have in Moore. He has been a winner at every stage of his career, both as a player and a coach," Benson said. As we saw this past weekend in our very own Caesars Superdome, Kellen led a creative and innovative offense in winning Super Bowl LIX. But Moore will have to prove the organization's faith in him was correct. When he begins his first season in New Orleans, Moore, 36, is the youngest NFL head coach entering the 2025 season, his first stint as a head coach at any level. He spent the 2024 season with the Philadelphia Eagles, who ranked 7th in scoring offense and averaged 27.2 points in the regular season. Eagles running back Saquon Barkley led the NFL with 2,005 rushing yards in their one season together. When the Saints hold their first practices this summer, he'll potentially be coaching veterans such as linebacker Demario Davis, who is 36, and defensive end Cameron Jordan, who is 35. Everyone likes to say it takes 10,000 hours to become an expert. That's a famous book. Certainly, I feel like being around it for a long time led me into the opportunities that I've been presented, Moore said. "I've been preparing for this my entire life. I feel ready," end quote. He'll also be different from former coaches such as Sean Payton, who stepped away after the 2021 season, and Darren Rizzi, the interim head coach for the second half of the 2024 season, after Dennis Allen was fired in November. Payton was known for his intensity, while Rizzi was known for his unique ability to relate to players. Mailata initially described Moore as mild-mannered last week before comparing him to outspoken Eagles coach Nick Sirianni, saying they were polar opposites, but Mailata pointed out players love Moore because he took their voices and opinions seriously. "I think when you have that kind of relationship with the offensive coordinator, you go the extra mile for them," he said. "So I think he's definitely got the ability to become a great coach," end quote. Moore's former players said that while he's quieter, he's also funny and relaxed, always ready with a corny joke. Making jokes is one way Moore has endeared himself to players. The other is by showing them what he's capable of doing. Eagles offensive tackle Lane Johnson said there was an adjustment period for Moore, who was hired in the 2024 offseason after a season as offensive coordinator with the Los Angeles Chargers, but any questions about him were quieted once he started drawing things up in meetings. While Moore is just starting as a head coach, he has already encountered plenty of unique experiences as a coach. He said he views things from a quarterback lens after playing for Boise State and then for the Detroit Lions and Dallas Cowboys. Moore went from playing for the Cowboys to coaching their quarterbacks when he retired in 2018. He was promoted to offensive coordinator in 2019 and held that role through the 2022 season. Moore described that change from player to coach as a seat shift in the room, but admitted that at 31, he was coaching a room half filled with his former teammates. It's about being authentic, being consistent. At the end of the day, if players feel like you're helping them become the best version of themselves, that's all they can ask for, Moore said. Former Cowboys tight end Jason Witten, who played with Moore from 2015 to 2017 and was coached by him in 2019, said he did it by staying confident and poised and always holding himself accountable. Moore has a lot to prove as he begins his Saints tenure, and several challenges lie ahead. He has to prepare for free agency, which begins on March 12th, and will need to get a staff in place, meet players, and make crucial roster evaluations in that time frame. One of those decisions will likely involve quarterback Derek Carr. Moore said he thought Carr was a tremendous starting quarterback when asked whether the team had to make a decision about the position. Moore had one last day before he jumps into the job permanently. He said he planned to attend the Super Bowl victory parade in Philadelphia with his former players. On Monday, he'll be back on the Saints job. By this stage in his career, he's used to being flexible. That flexibility will be key as he learns on his first full year in his new job. But he plans to stay true to himself and his leadership style, repeating that being authentic and consistent is key to success. I think everyone respects authenticity, being yourself. We understand that there's challenges associated with this job, Moore said. It is a leadership job first and foremost, and it's very, very important. You're going to have to lead in a lot of different ways. You're going to have to challenge people. You're going to have to trust people. You're going to have to put people in challenging situations. So we're going to go through that. And I think that this is a perfect fit for the New Orleans Saints, who have been looking for their next head coach of the future. I believe the New Orleans Saints have been looking for someone to come in and fill that void that Sean Payton left when he decided to step down as the head coach. And Kellen Moore just might be that guy, especially coming off a Super Bowl victory, which was in New Orleans as an offensive coordinator. He may just be the guy to be able to turn this New Orleans Saints team around and get them back into their winning ways like they were with Sean Payton and Drew Brees back in the day. But I want to know what you guys think. Let me know in the comment section. Do you think this is a good fit for the Saints to hire Kellen Moore as their next head coach? Let me know in the comment section what you think. Do you like it? Do you not like it? Let me know. But that is all the time we have for today. This has been episode 22 of the Good Game Podcast. I want to thank everyone for tuning in on today's episode. And once again, if you haven't already, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit that bell notification button so you get notified anytime I drop a new episode on the channel. I want to thank everyone once again for tuning in. Until next time, be safe and peace out.